What's up, y'all? Another quick thought from me, Greg Brown here on Evolution TV. If you know my story, living in Brazil, playing pro ball, coming back home, starting a business, I ran into a lot of people along my journey that were going through different seasons of whether it be faith journeys or philosophical journeys. I remember meeting people who were studying Plato. One of my roommates in college was from Greece. And we would talk about, Socrates and Plato and, all these different philosophies. And then meeting one of my guys, Jordan, down in Brazil. And, he's a very strong Christian, and hearing his story. And then, for me, I remember starting to dive into just even meditation and breathing, right? Because I remember watching this, what was this thing called? It was a YouTube video, it was a TED Talk from a guy, Dr. Alan Watkins. He's a neuroscientist, and he talked about the power of breathing and what it does for your brain waves, right? And your frontal cortex gets shut off when you're stressed out and you can't think, and it's just fight or flight, right? And you lose all rationale. And how breathing would calm that down. And I remember doing that a lot while I was playing ball, and my performance started to improve. And then I remember starting a business and having, one of my mentors was a Jehovah's Witness, and then somebody else that I met who was a Christian who was doing really well in business, and I saw how calm he was when he was running his business, and I hadn't seen that from other people, and I'm like, well, I wonder what this guy's about, and then going to church, and then just diving into the world of Christianity, and just understanding the difference between false modern Christianity versus truly understanding who Jesus is, and then I've met people who are Buddhists. I have friends I'm really close with that are Muslim. There's just so many different backgrounds that people have, and so many different perspectives on the world. That was one of the biggest things for me traveling did, and that's why I tell people all the time, go see the world, man. Step outside of your box, step outside of your neighborhood, step outside of your way of thinking. I don't care what it is. If you're a Christian, hang out with some Muslims. If you're Buddhist, hang out with some Jews, right? If you're from America, hang out with some people from Asia or from different places, man. Because if not, what you're gonna do is you're gonna create a life where you're so boxed into one perspective, and you have all these biases, right? There's these echo chambers, right, where you're, same with political affiliations, right? Let's just say, for example, you're a Democrat, and then your parents are Democrats, and then your teachers are Democrats, and everyone you hang around is Democrat. Before you know it, you can't even understand why anybody would be a Republican, right? You ever have this mindset where you're like, I don't even understand why you would think that way, right? That's a problem, right? Or maybe you're a Republican, and the people you learn from, they're all Republicans, so you're in this echo chamber, and everyone you follow on social media is Republican. Before you know it, you think Democrats are not even human, right? And what it does is it shuts you off from having a broad perspective of understanding that there's a little bit of truth in everything out there, man. There's some falsehoods as well, right? And that's what you have to, there's this word discern. You have to be able to discern what's true and what's not. One of the things that I found, even just in, my journey, personally for me, I've learned a lot, philosophies, mindset, different things I've studied, hundreds of books and so many different things. One thing that I found throughout every major religion that I've even studied or heard from is that everyone looks at this guy named Jesus as a credible figure, right? He was he was a real person, and you have people who are atheists that say no, he wasn't, or these people who say that he never lived, but I've seen so many different religious teachings that point to Jesus as a figure that they've learned from, and one of the things that I found even in the body of Christianity, in the religion of Christianity, is you have people that are practicing Christianity but they're not following Jesus, right? And you have people who are going to Christian churches, but they don't understand a relationship with Jesus, right? And this is really what the Pharisees did. They thought they knew what God had said, but the person that God actually sent, they couldn't understand, right? And so I say that to say, one of the things I wanted to talk about today, very, very briefly, is in the world of Christianity, something that I've noticed is there's these two, opposing perspectives that I see, where it's something called a prosperity gospel, and then there's something called a poverty gospel, right? And it's not that there's these sections where it's like, I believe in the poverty gospel and I believe in the prosperity gospel, but subconsciously there are people operating under these different principles. And one of them is that the poorer you are, the more holy you are, right? One of them says if you're not wealthy, you haven't experienced the blessings of God. And one of the things that I've learned is that both of those are not true. That the poverty gospel and the prosperity gospel are both false. Okay, what does that mean? That means that being rich does not make you more godly than the next person, neither does being poor. One of the things that many of us as human beings forget, especially when we come across something that's new, that's powerful, that's impactful, something that changes our life, something that we forget about humanity is the thing that makes humans so powerful, the thing that makes humanity more powerful than anything on planet Earth is our awareness, our consciousness, and our free will, right? And so what I found is when people become Christians, for example, it's almost like they completely forget about the power of free will. And what I mean by this is, what makes you powerful as a human being is that you have choice. Okay, when people argue the fact that God doesn't exist, one of the things they say is, well, why does God let bad things happen, right? And one of the things that I recognize is, if only good things were allowed and I was doing good things, I would be rendered powerless. Okay, why? Because if the world forces me to be good and I am good, I have no power, because I don't have the ability to decide to do something else, right? Where real true power comes in is when someone has the free will to make decisions for themselves, okay? And so what makes us as humans so powerful is that we do have free will. The challenge is when people first come to know God, it's almost like they forget that we have free will. They think that everyone has to follow God or everyone has to believe in what they believe. And this is why wars take place, because you have someone who's Christian trying to force people who are Muslim to follow what they're teaching, or you have Muslims that are trying to force Christians to believe in what they're teaching. And what you realize is, if I were to force you to believe in what I believe, then you have no power. But I would only try to force you if I was powerless. Right? The only thing that makes even leadership or following something or believing in something powerful is that you could choose not to, right? And so the whole point of this video for me is, for any of you watching, maybe you just came across Christianity, or maybe you're studying Buddhism, or maybe you're studying Islam, or whatever. Maybe you came across something. Maybe you're just in a season where you're waking up. You're becoming aware of some truths that you were completely unaware of when you were younger. Do not forget about the power of free will. Okay? And the power of free will says that you had a choice to believe what you believe. And the people that you know, they have choices as well. There's a book by Mel Robbins called Let Them. And it's really, really powerful. I think on the back of it, I forget exactly what it says, but it says something along the lines of, the moment you let people be themselves, that's when you finally are free to be yourself, right? And that is so profound, because as human beings, we truly find our most powerful version of ourselves when we stop trying to be like other people, stop trying to live for other people, and we finally decide to be unapologetically who we believe we were created to be. Okay, now obviously this entire video is off of the premise that as human beings we were created, okay? And so here's the thing, if you don't believe we were created, or if you're watching this, you're saying, well, this guy's full of it because God doesn't exist. If that's you, then that would mean that you believe maybe in the Big Bang, for example, right? And so whether you believe God exists or you don't, what that means to me is that you do believe that miracles exist. exist. Because for a universe to go from zero to everything that we've seen today, that in itself is a miracle. And so you either believe in a miracle of God or the miracle of science, but you do believe in a miracle. I just so happen to believe that the miracle of a man dying for our sins, that miracle, I have decided, because I have power, I've decided to believe that. At the end of the day, whatever you choose to believe, the most important part about that statement is that you chose, that you have the free will and the power to choose to believe what you want to believe, and then live a life accordingly. And I truly believe when you do that, the people who were meant to align with you, they will freely choose to do so. And so that's all I got for you guys here today. Just remember the power of free will. And I hope you have the courage to live the life that you were created to live. Take care, y'all.